Hello, my name is Rocco Strangio, and I'm the host of the Law, AI, and Money podcast. I bring on attorneys, engineers, and entrepreneurs to unravel the world of AI and to discuss how it'll affect the legal profession. Today, I am joined by Sarah London, a prominent mass torts attorney at Girard Sharp, LLP. Over Sarah's career, she's represented clients harmed by vaping and tobacco companies, dangerous drugs and medical devices, environmental disasters, and much more. Sarah's illustrious career includes serving as co-lead counsel in the JUUL products liability litigation, serving as settlement counsel in the Flint Water Cases, and as serving as a member of the Executive Committee in the Gilead HIV drug injury litigation. Today, Sarah is serving as co-lead counsel in two major litigations against big tech companies. She's serving as co-lead against Roblox in the sexual exploitation cases and against Uber in the sexual assault cases. In addition to being an outstanding attorney, Sarah is also a thought leader. She's often a speaker, writer, and lecturer on all topics related to her practice. We hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Sarah, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk to me about everything that you're doing. I know a lot of people would be interested to know exactly what you're working on and just how, what it's like to litigate against the cases and defendants that you're litigating against. And so it's a huge honor to have you on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank
I
you. Me
always start
too.
out, I always start out because I'm always fascinated by the diversity of stories I get when I ask people, why they became an attorney, what made them want to practice law, specifically personal injury law. And so what made you want to be an attorney and a litigator?
Sure. So I think it started for me in fifth grade. In fifth grade, I um, my class played eraser tag every day. At the end of the day, it was our way of getting the wiggles out and having fun. Um,
Yep.
and our teacher decided that the stakes were not high enough. It was not competitive enough when the girls were playing. So he banned the girls from playing eraser tag. It became a
It's crazy.
boys only. I know. I know. So it was, you're right. It's not right. It was not just.
Unbelievable. That's actually unbelievable.
And yes, I know. I know it's shocking that in the 1980s, that was still uh, a viewpoint that was
Right.
seemingly fine.
Normalized, I guess. I don't
Normalized.
know.
That's right. But I couldn't stand for it. The girls, we were very disappointed and frustrated with this new rule. And so I led a march to a walkout of our fifth grade, like to our principal, and advocated for justice, for eraser tag, equality under eraser tag law. And we won.
Oh my goodness.
We overturned the big, powerful rule against us that the teacher had made and all the boys. So we got to play eraser tag again, and it I think sparked in me um, a lifelong desire, excitement, and thrill of fighting as the little guy against the big guy for justice. And so I ultimately went on to become an organizer.
Yeah.
So I was a union organizer. I was an organizer for Planned Parenthood in Kansas, where I uh, learned a whole lot about how to listen and work across the aisle and with people of very different viewpoints, but to try to find common ground and fight for the most vulnerable people. Um, and that was an incredible experience for me. And so I really just wanted to keep organizing. I love the power of people against, the big powerful interests.
Yeah.
That's been just something I've been involved in my whole life. And when I was organizing and lobbying on behalf of women and girls for comprehensive healthcare access and responsible sex education and all of the things that we stood for at Planned Parenthood, I constantly was confronting the language of the law. And a lot of people in power as legislators, government, they were lawyers, and they time and again would engage me in these conversations as I'm trying to advocate, and I would confront obstacles because I didn't have a law degree. I didn't have that incredible education and language of power that comes from being a lawyer to really fight against injustice. So I decided to go to law school, and my expectation was to go back out and continue my work as an organizer, but now with this fancy degree and great language, and I could not be intimidated or bullied or pushed around, and be able to be a stronger and better voice for vulnerable people and for our community. And I got sideways when I got to law school. I actually just really liked law school. And I liked learning.
You found something you really loved.
It turned out I really found it's so exciting and interesting as to think about utilizing these tools that we learned about in law school as mechanisms for justice and for fighting for the most vulnerable. So I set out while I was at Berkeley Law to find a place to work where I could be on behalf of the people, working for those who are more vulnerable, for ordinary people against the biggest forces that engaged in this terrible conduct and exploitative behavior for their own profit and gain. And when that's when I learned about a field of law where you could represent plaintiffs. I had no lawyers in my family. I'm the first in my family to go to graduate school. I didn't come from a family that was as well versed in how to navigate the kind of in law field. So I was really appreciative that my counselors at Berkeley, they handed me a sheet of paper with names of people who did this plaintiff law. And all of them, unfortunately, had passed away, except for Elizabeth Cabraser. And so I reached out and found out a lot more, and was very excited to get the opportunity to work as a summer law clerk for Leif Cabraser, and then went on to start my career there.
Of course. Wow. I got to say, first of all, the eraser tag story is amazing. Pretty heavy for 5th grade, the fact that you guys did a walkout, but that's awesome. And I feel like that does, set everybody has a really interesting story. So I'd love to ask, because I feel like mine was as boring as it gets. And the reason I ask is because, I want it to be like a tax attorney, because I have an accounting degree as well. And so, but everybody has a different story, especially people who litigate, because you guys are tough. A lot of times it's having to do with representing the little guy. And that kind of segues into what I want to get into now, which is the fact that you always tend to litigate against the largest defendants, whether we're talking mega companies like big tech, video game platforms, pharmaceutical drug and device makers, you name it. That's different than just litigating, in your local big companies. So how do you mentally and strategically approach litigating against a defendant of that size?
So I really got started in my career saying yes to an assignment, which was to work on tobacco cases that our firm had. Mm-hmm. And, I have to be honest, I don't think I had any understanding or awareness of what it meant to say yes to something like that.
You're like, this is going to be like 5th grade.
Right, exactly. Like, well, this sounds like an interesting case, and these people were gravely hurt,
Hmm.
and there's an injustice here, and I want to work on it. So I learned pretty early what it's like to be up against the biggest forces in the world, because I really cut my teeth as a lawyer trying cases against big tobacco.
Right.
And what I learned through that experience, first and foremost, it cemented my determination
Yep.
to do this work. Because in the courtroom, it's one of the only places on the planet where an ordinary person can come equal under the law and have their case decided, their future decided, um, stand equal with the biggest companies on the planet, and under the eyes of the law are treated as equals.
Hmm.
And in almost every other form of our lives, we feel so disempowered, right? Like you go to buy anything in this country nowadays, and you're forced to scroll and scroll and scroll and sign something. You can't negotiate that.
Hmm.
If you want a cell phone, you have to give up certain kind of rights. Everything we do, you have to give up your privacy just to, be able to email your family members or
Right.
communicate. So, I feel like this is an absolute it's the purpose and driving force of my life and my career, is to um, help people get their day in court, to get the justice they deserve in the forum that is the one and only place in the world, in America, where you can be treated equally under the eyes of the law and have the conscience of the community decide. And once I got the opportunity and the experience to go in front of a jury on behalf of my client and help them tell their story, and not just their own story of what happened to them, but to tell the story of what this company did in pursuit of profit to um, at the expense of the rights and dignity and humanity of people.
Hmm.
um, there's just nothing more thrilling and more dignified in this profession, in my view, than to take that on at any level. But I had the extraordinary privilege and opportunity to start early in my career with the biggest and the
Right.
most powerful. And so
I know.
I just got used to it. It just became kind of ordinary how you do this work. So I don't
Wow.
feel intimidated by it. I certainly now feel far more um, prepared and understanding of what taking on something like this really is. It's extremely expensive. It's very taxing. When these companies have access to the most extraordinary resources, the
Right.
most well educated lawyers, the vast operations behind them, all the tools at their disposal to uncover any, rock or stone or put any of those in front of you. Like, I've done that. I've seen that. I've been through it before, and we've gotten over them. And so putting my faith and trust in our jury system, it's never let me down. It's never ever let me down. And
Hmm.
so just staying focused on how do we get that story to that jury, not getting distracted by all the many, many, many other like things around here, and the obstacles they'll throw in your way, and all the sand in the gears, and all the ways in which having bazillions of dollars and access to all the lawyers and all the process you can buy. Like, if we can stay focused on how do we get this story to trial, how do we stay targeted and efficient, so that we can uncover the evidence we need without getting into all these rabbit holes and all this waste of time and effort and
Yep.
energy, um, then it, it's it's the it's the best thing I feel like I can do in this profession, is to take on the biggest and the baddest with that experience that I have on behalf of the most vulnerable. And I just feel like that has never let me down.
I could not agree more. And I think it's a relief to hear that because, how current events are going right now in our country, sometimes it's easy to get disappointed or distressed at things that are happening. But one thing we do have right, it seems, is the avenues for recourse when it comes to finding liability against big defendants like this. I mean, it's almost like a form of regulation, and no other country, to my knowledge, really has it built out in the same way that we do. So that's an amazing thing. As
I
far
agree
as
with you. Can I just say one thing about
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Because I think, the degree to which lawyers that, I've stood on many shoulders, and that
right,
lawyers that I work shoulder to shoulder with that take on these big cases with no guarantees of success, with huge amounts of risk on behalf of very vulnerable people that require a lot of attention and care. When we do this work and we are able to get the stories out, get the truth out, get the justice that these cases demand and require, and the public accounting for what's happened, what we are seeing increasingly that is a huge danger and risk to our clients, probably more than anything else, are the companies seeking to cut off access to justice and the courts. So we are seeing effort upon effort upon effort to attack the system, to attack the attorneys who take these cases for people who cannot pay the thousands of dollars an hour that these companies can pay their lawyers. When we take on cases for ordinary people and we use our creativity, our tenacity, and the protection of the laws to get justice, these companies continue to try to block access to the courts and access to people getting lawyers. And so that is one of the greatest threats that I see right now to this. And to your point, we have been serving as the public safety system. We are
right.
the enforcement arm for the public safety laws. Regulations have been weakened. Lobbyists have been, and special interests for the biggest and most powerful companies have managed to stave off meaningful regulation for so long that this is sadly, our country is not in a position to really meaningfully protect our kids. But if we can hold these companies accountable and show that there will be consequences, we can hopefully deter them and make them build in safety as part of their permission to operate, and not just a nice to have, but a must have. And so that's what we're really fighting on right now, and joining together, not just in the courtroom, but drawing on that organizing experience they have we have to get out there and fight. All of us have to go out there and fight,
Right.
because if we aren't careful, this very precious, sacred space where people can still come before a judge and get equal treatment under the law against any company, no matter the size, that's going to erode and go away. So
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. We can get back to that a little bit later on. I have some points to ask and bring up. But as far as leadership goes in mass torts, there are very few that rival your resume. You were settlement counsel in the Flint Water Cases, Executive Committee appointment in the Gilead HIV drug cases. You were named co-lead and led the JUUL multi-district litigation that secured hundreds of millions of dollars for injured parties there. And you've been since appointed as a co-lead in Uber and Roblox sexual exploitation cases. And so I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to be a co-lead, to be in leadership of a mass tort? What does that entail? And how does leadership work for mass torts for our viewers that may not know how mass torts operates?
Yeah, sure. Um, so having the confidence and the responsibility to lead a multi-district litigation is one of the greatest privileges and honors of my career, of my life. This role is super important. What we do is we help steer the strategy and make the decisions for litigation and procedure and substance on behalf of all of the claimants that are involved in a case. And the court appoints us with that job, vests us with certain authority and responsibility. And, we take that extremely seriously. So, convening a group of lawyers to, these aren't just lawyers in our own firms. These aren't like just my partners or my junior associates, although I have my partners and my associates working hard with me alongside me on these cases. But we effectively build a new law firm for each one of these big mass tort cases, drawing from the talent and the resources of all the plaintiffs' counsel, where we come together and we kind of operate like a council to make strategic decisions, to spread the work, spread out the risk, spread the resources, and focus our efforts, and leveraging the best talent there is to get the best possible results for our clients, and keep it organized and streamlined so that the court is able to manage. Because when some of these cases involve so many thousands of people, and there could be so many thousands of cases, that it would overwhelm our judiciary. It would break our system if we weren't able to organize it and focus it. And our strategy is always aligned with the court's goals of speedy, efficient, just resolution of these civil matters. And so what we do is we put committees together to handle the discovery, to handle expert retention, to prepare for trial, to uh, develop and advance our legal claims. And so that's, in each mass tort, we have a little bit of a different structure that meets the moment for that case and what it requires. For example, Roblox is a case involving 4 big tech companies. It is going to be a huge undertaking that will involve discovery and electronic discovery of 4 tech companies. That's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of focus. It's going to take a lot of expertise and a lot of tenacity and determination to keep that moving and on track, while also recognizing that we have to manage it and deal with. This case involves child sexual exploitation materials. So everything has to be handled extremely carefully. There are all kinds of different laws that are in place there that we have to engage in. And, we have trauma-informed training practices and approaches that we all have to take in these cases with our most vulnerable, exploited clients. So this one's, every case is a little bit unique in exactly what the dimensions are, what we have to approach and how we deal with it. Uber is one defendant, but that defendant happens to be arguably the biggest company in the whole planet, with, extraordinary amounts of data, with extraordinary amounts of opportunities for influence, and its marketing prowess is really unparalleled, and would have been like the glint in the eye of those who marketed for big tobacco. What reach Uber has. So, we have a lot to harness in that case as well, even with just one defendant. But you have varied cases involving all 50 states. These are all 50, there's lots of different dynamics that we have to approach in that case as well.
Right.
So every case is a little bit different, but the fundamental principles of leadership are the same. We seek to lead with integrity, to drive for the just, speedy, and efficient resolution of each one of these cases, and to change these industries. Because if it's not going to be us, it's not going to happen. We are in the best possible position to drive industry reform. So they have to take their customers' safety into account when they make their product designs, when they make their marketing choices.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I Going back to sort of the threats that our space is getting, both from a governmental standpoint, from some bad actors. A lot of times it's also public opinion that I feel threatens the sanctity of what is going on in mass torts. And, I have friends and I'll tell them about certain mass torts that are developing. And the immediate reaction, I don't know why this is, but the immediate reaction is, oh, they're just looking for anybody who has deep pockets to go and sue.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because we should all be, we should be a community, but, collectively trying to work for our best interests. Can you explain, and I don't know if you can or cannot since you are leading these litigations, but if you could you explain what's going on in like the Uber litigation and the Roblox litigation, and explain just how much people are being exploited through malicious, intentional, bad actions of some of these defendants? Because a lot of times it's not just, oh, we made a mistake and now we're getting caught on it because we're successful. No, a lot of times there's not a regulation in place and you're using deceptive tactics to exploit little people for the benefit of improving your balance sheet and growing as basically a multinational sovereign entity of its own.
Yeah. These are really good and tough questions. And, as a trial lawyer, I speak to juries a lot, and I think you're exactly right. That a lot of people, before they hear more about what has really been going on, I think there is, and has continued to be, kind of a lot of misinformation about, about the practice of law on behalf of people.
Natural skepticism against, attorneys who practice personal injury for
Yeah,
whatever
absolutely.
reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to tell you a little bit about what these two cases are about. And there's a lot of similarities, and then there are some unique features. So I'll start with Uber. You know, from very early in Uber's inception, they well understood that what they were building and creating were the optimal conditions for sexual assault and exploitation. And rather than meaningfully address that issue and be honest and straightforward with the public, what they chose to do is to market specifically to women, and encourage them to go out, have a great time, drink, and Uber will get you home safely. They made a promise that what they were delivering was safe ride home for intoxicated women. Women became their marketing target because it was a huge opportunity to drive huge profits for Uber. Uber also understood and well studied and researched that in order to capture that extremely attractive target for their bottom line, they had to build trust. They had to convey the impression and perception of safety, not just with women, but with everyone. So Uber has cultivated an image of safety to support its marketing and business goals of getting more butts in seats, more time. And that big target was on women. And so Uber knew it had a grave risk of sexual assault. It knew very early that it was experiencing many reports, an intolerably high number of reports of sexual assault. And it doubled down on that information in doing more marketing to women, and more reassurances of safety, and hiding the real truth from the public. And this strategy has led to unprecedented billions and billions of dollars for Uber at the expense of lifetime trauma and suffering for way too many vulnerable people. And for way too long, Uber shut that behind private closed doors and forced people into arbitration so that it would never become public how pervasive this problem is. And they refused, because of money, to employ the obvious best practices in terms of safety that would prevent this from happening. Cameras, having more women drivers. These are obvious solutions that Uber refused to engage because of money. And so these are just some of the reasons that it's made its own bed, right? Uber made its own decisions about how to balance safety with profit. And they went for more and more and more profit at the expense of safety. And that's when they end up getting sued because too many people experienced one of the most terrifying things and most frightening things you can ever imagine, of believing you are in the safe care. You are being transported safely. You are at the hands of somebody who has promised to take you from place A, like home or somewhere else, or maybe to a medical appointment. And that very person has turned around and completely betrayed you and violated you. This leads to the rest of their lives being distrustful. The client who we just tried her case, she still sleeps with the light on. She can't sleep alone. She's living at home with her parents, fearful of going to get her tires checked or her oil changed, because distrust of strangers has become so pervasive in her life. This is because Uber didn't take very basic, obvious, reasonable, and appropriate steps to protect people, or just be straight up and honest with them about the risks they knew about. And that's the thing about big tech now, right? So Uber, they have a score. Like, they have an algorithm that will predict how likely you are to be raped in their cars. That's the evidence that we uncovered in this litigation. Nobody would have known about that. But it's how they choose to utilize the data and the information they have. If all of that stays secret and we just trust big companies, instead of bring these lawsuits and bring these cases that allow us to uncover the evidence and get the truth out to the public, nobody would know. Nobody would know what now people are starting to learn and understand about how to protect themselves and take care of themselves and their loved ones, instead of just trusting that Uber's got your back. You can't trust them. That's the thing. That's what we're learning in these cases. As they say, just trust us, trust us, trust us. And the truth is you can't, because at every turn they're seeking to enrich themselves at the expense of the people that they are claiming to protect. So that's the Uber case. And Uber can absolutely get itself out of its own mess. It can make better choices about how it screens, about how it warns the public, about implementing cameras, getting more women drivers on the road and taking care of those women drivers. There's just a lot of different things that they can do. And I think what we see in this case, just like we saw with big tobacco, is once there are lawsuits, once litigation, once you have plaintiffs' lawyers, personal injury lawyers, that at their own risk take on these huge cases with no guarantee of being paid, on behalf of injured clients, and seek and never give up on getting the truth, it's only then that you start to see the industry reform itself and change. And so we've seen that happen in Uber. They've announced several changes that are good. They're good things to do, but they wouldn't have done it if we hadn't brought these lawsuits. And
Right.
that's why our clients are bringing these lawsuits. They come to us and they want this to never happen to anyone again. So, that's what these cases are really about. Is my clients, the first thing they say to me is, I never want any other person to go through what I've been through. How do we stop it? How do we stop this? So, that's just, I think, one thing to convey, to people is, I think there's a misunderstanding of what people are in it for. Because let me tell you, like, to be a sexual assault victim and undergo a litigation against one of the biggest companies in the world, who turn over every stone about you, who will seek to undermine your credibility, attack you personally,
Yeah.
um, uh, you know, intimidate you and question everything about you and bring up everything in your whole past. Um, that's not the kind of thing people do, just because they want a buck. Like that, being coming forward and being a brave and courageous voice to protect other people, like that's who these clients are. That's what they're in it for. Um, and it's drives and inspires me every day. On Roblox, here's here's a situation. Like, we know with Uber, they create an environment that they know, late at night, where with people, with access to vulnerable populations, where it's a prime opportunity for opportunistic sex offenders.
Hmm.
Roblox, you're literally creating a playground for kids and having cultivating a place where predators will absolutely want to be, and not taking the necessary measures to protect kids from predators coming onto their playground, and then having that same misinformation spread and assurances to parents and the public to just trust them that it is safe when it's not. It's that kind of gaslighting. It's that kind of, like, deception, that is, it's intolerable, and that it takes lawsuits to get real meaningful change, to stop it. Because with the amount of power in marketing, which they know works, people trust and believe them, and then they turn around and betray people. Like, it's time and again, what we see. And if we don't stand up for our kids against big tech, who are profiting, so handsomely, um, through both inviting, and cultivating a place for kids to play, um, that knowing it's attracting predators, and knowing that those predators are taking kids onto other platforms, who are casting a blind eye, which is what we saw, Meta, the verdicts against Meta, in the last 2 weeks, they
Yep.
are showing what the conscience of the community is. These companies need to face the community. They've had no accountability. And that's what, these lawsuits do, is they allow the community to weigh in
Yep.
on what's right.
And I think it's also important, to the point you made before, that without these litigations and through discovery, we wouldn't learn about what is going on, what these companies are doing. Because what I heard about Uber is that their review system was tailored in a way to make it seem like all of these drivers were perfect. Like 5 stars for everybody, automatic 5 star generation after a couple weeks. If you had a bad review, maybe that would get erased after a couple of weeks. They tried in every way to make it seem like all of the drivers on the road, were safe, were never had an instance or something historical bad about them. So I think that's super important. And I also think it's important to share those stories, because without it, people wouldn't. We need to be skeptical of the actors that be, the powers that be, that govern our society. Like you mentioned before, every day to participate in society, we have to give up some of our rights. we are in many ways at their mercy. And so it's funny to me that, and the reason I brought it up, it's funny to me how people are skeptical then of the little guy instead of the people who are actually puppeteering everything. So,
But we're not going to change every heart and mind, right? I mean, I think having a healthy degree of skepticism all around is definitely not a bad thing. But my hope in doing this work and in work, in talking with juries is, let me show you the evidence. Let you just let's you decide. I think juries do amazing, amazing work. People from all different backgrounds come together to look at the evidence from their own unique, diverse perspectives and their life experience and their common sense. And that is who we are. That's our audience.
yeah, juries are remarkably accurate too. In many studies, when judges review jury verdicts and decisions, they actually get them spot on, like the vast majority of the time. Like juries can be trusted as, and they represent the public. So I think that's great, and it's great to hear that you have so much confidence in putting things in front of a jury for the right outcomes to surface. Sarah, lastly, the last point I want to ask is, and I know you've kind of alluded to this before, but with all this litigation, it can be incredibly difficult, and an attorney that is litigating so many cases needs to find motivation day in, day out. What is that motivation for you?
My family, and I think my family and my faith. I was raised as a follower of Judaism. I'm Jewish. And, Tikkun Olam was a just foundational principle for me growing up, to heal the world, to leave the world better than you found it. And I take that with me every single day as a driving motivation to make the world better for the clients that I serve, for my children, for my family. It keeps me fueled, and I am so grateful that I have the opportunity and the tools to use as a lawyer to leave hopefully the world a little better than I found it.
Yeah, and so many are counting on you, not to put pressure on you, but you really are, as I mentioned before, there's very few attorneys that I know that I'm even aware of that are working on the high stakes that you are with the various litigations you're leading. So, Sarah, I just want to say thank you for coming on, taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with myself and our viewers and share kind of your point of view in all of this. It's super cool to hear from somebody who's down in the trenches and doing it. So thank you. And if you want to share one more thing before we wrap up, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with you and the messaging that you're bringing to the public, to better understand this world that we work in. It's an incredible profession, and I'm just appreciating that you're bringing some of these stories to life, because it's our clients are so brave, and courageous, and it's a gift that you're helping to tell their stories. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sarah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Law, AI, and Money podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to like and subscribe
so we can keep the conversation going. Thank you.